300 soldiers watched Staff Sergeant Jackson Cross break Private First Class Emma Chen's wrist. Not literally, not yet, but close enough that the 22-year-old woman gasped and her face went white, and every recruit in formation understood they were watching something cross a line from hard training into something else, something darker. Cross held the joint lock 3 seconds longer than necessary, teaching a lesson, making a point, demonstrating what failure looked like when the enemy did not care about training safety protocols or Geneva Conventions, or the fact that you were tired and scared and just wanted to go home. Downrange, failure meant death. Here, it just meant pain. He released Chen. She stumbled backward, cradling her wrist. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. Cross had trained that out of her over 7 weeks of advanced individual training. Crying was weakness. Weakness got you killed. That's what failure feels like, Private. Remember it. The formation stood silent under the North Carolina sun. 50 recruits in identical physical training uniforms, all watching their instructor with a mixture of fear and something that might have been resentment. The female soldiers in particular. They had learned to keep their faces blank when Sergeant Cross trained them, to hide the anger that came from being pushed harder than the male recruits, from being held to standards that felt less like preparation and more like punishment. Private Chen looked like she wanted to say something. Her mouth open, her jaw worked, but the words did not come. What could she say? That it hurt? Cross knew it hurt. That was the point. A voice cut through the tension from the back ranks. Female, calm, William, carrying the kind of authority that made Cross's spine straighten before his conscious mind registered the challenge. That technique will get them killed, Sergeant. Cross turned. The woman stood in the last row, partially hidden by taller soldiers. Mid-30s, fit, wearing standard battle dress uniform with no visible rank insignia. Her face was all hard angles and sharper eyes, the kind of face that had seen things most people only survived in nightmares. She carried herself with relaxed readiness, weight balanced, hands loose, someone comfortable with violence. Excuse me? Cross's voice dropped an octave. Who the hell are you? Captain Maya Reeves. The woman moved forward through the formation with economical grace, soldiers stepping aside instinctively. I'm here for mandatory decompression, observing training protocols. Observing. The word landed like an insult. Captain, with respect, I've been teaching hand-to-hand combat for 12 years. I've trained over 600 soldiers. I know what I'm doing. Maya stopped 3 paces away. Do you? Because that wrist lock angle creates leverage for the attacker, not the defender. Anyone who uses that technique against a trained opponent will end up with a broken wrist. Or worse. The 50 recruits held their collective breath. Several female soldiers exchanged glances. Private Chen looked from Cross to Maya and back again, confusion and hope warring on her face. Cross felt heat rising in his chest. 7 years of grief and rage and guilt, looking for an exit. This woman had just questioned his competence in front of his formation, had embarrassed him, had challenged his authority with the casual confidence of someone who thought rank and gender made her immune to consequences. Step forward, Captain. His voice stayed level through sheer force of will. If you think my technique is wrong, show me the correct one. Maya hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, long enough for Cross to see she understood this was a trap, that he was setting her up to fail, to look foolish, to learn her place. She stepped forward anyway. They faced each other in the center of the training area. The morning sun burned off the last of the haze. Somewhere beyond the base perimeter, traffic hummed on distant highways. Birds called from pine trees at the field's edge. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. The calm before violence. Show me, Cross said. Maya took his wrist. Her grip was firm but controlled. She rotated his hand inward, toward the thumb, attacking the weakest point. Applied pressure with surgical precision. The joint lock engaged perfectly. Cross felt his balance shift, felt how easily she could put him on the ground if she wanted. She released him. Like this, internal rotation, not external. You're teaching them to fight strength. They need to attack weakness. Cross stared at her. His wrist tingled where she had gripped it. His pride stung worse. Every instinct screamed at him to reassert dominance, to put this woman in her place, to remind everyone watching that this was his field, his formation, his authority. Who do you think you are? The words came out harder than intended. You walk onto my training field, question my instruction, Embarrass me in front of my recruits and think that's acceptable? Maya's expression remained neutral. Teaching faulty techniques that endanger lives is what's unacceptable. Your ego isn't my concern, Sergeant. His hand moved before thought could stop it. Pure instinct, pure rage. 7 years of grief with nowhere to go except outward. His fist drew back, his weight shifted, his shoulder rotated. Every piece of biomechanics aligned for a strike that would connect with her face and teach her about respect and knowing her goddamn place. The world slowed to syrup. Cross saw his fist cutting through air, saw Maya's eyes track the movement with professional calm, saw the microsecond when she made her decision, when training overrode hesitation and Delta Force muscle memory took control. She moved, not away, toward, closing distance, getting inside his reach. Her left hand caught his wrist mid-punch. Her right hand found his elbow. Her hips turned. Physics in 7 years of Tier 1 training channeled through a technique so smooth it looked choreographed. Cross's feet left Earth. His body rotated through space. The impact drove breath from his lungs. He tried to catch himself, tried to break the fall. His right arm took the full force of landing. The sound was wrong. Not the dull thud of flesh on dirt. Something sharper, clearer. The specific crack of bone giving up structural integrity under load it was never designed to handle. His radius, his ulna, both forearm bones, snapped clean through. The pain arrived a half-second later. White hot. Total. The kind of agony that turns strong men into screaming children. Jackson Cross screamed. The training field exploded into chaos. 50 recruits breaking formation, surging forward. Staff Sergeant Jerome Hayes arrived first, dropping to his knees beside his friend, his face draining of color. Jack, Jesus Christ, Jack, don't move! Rachel Santos was there seconds later, medical bag already open. Company medic, 30 years old, 2 deployments, hands that had treated everything from blisters to traumatic amputations. She took one look at Cross's arm and her expression went professional, emotions locked behind training. Compound fracture, both bones, she keyed her radio. Medical emergency, training field 7. Need immediate transport and surgical prep. Cross tried to focus through the pain, tried to stay present. Shock was setting in, that cold feeling spreading from his chest, his vision narrowing to a tunnel. He turned his head, saw Maya standing exactly where she had been, saw her face finally showing something other than neutrality. Regret, or maybe just calculation. You broke my arm, he managed, the words slurred as Santos injected morphine. You broke my goddamn arm. Maya said nothing, just stood there watching, waiting, her expression unreadable. Master Sergeant Vincent Harper pushed through the crowd, range safety officer, the man who would write the report that ended careers. Everyone hold position, his command voice cut through chaos. Nobody moves until we sort this out. 50 recruits froze in place. They formed a loose semicircle around Cross, around Maya, around the wreckage of what had been routine training 15 minutes earlier. Some faces showed shock, others confusion. Several of the female soldiers showed something else, something that looked like satisfaction. Private Chen stood closest, her injured wrist forgotten. Her eyes locked on Maya. Her expression held something Cross had never seen in 7 weeks of training her. Hope. The ambulance screamed onto the training field within 4 minutes. Fort Garrison maintained a full emergency response team because training accidents were statistically inevitable. 2 paramedics loaded Cross onto a stretcher. Santos climbed in without asking permission. Hayes followed. As they pulled away, Cross caught one last glimpse through morphine haze. 50 recruits still frozen in that semicircle. Harper talking rapidly into his radio. And Maya, standing alone, standing apart, watching the ambulance with an expression that might have been concern or guilt, or maybe just the same cold calculation that had broken his arm in 0.7 seconds. The hospital received them efficiently. Within 90 minutes, Cross was in surgery. The orthopedic surgeon was Major David Barrett, 45, civilian-trained, military-employed. Steady hands, reputation for brutal honesty. You're lucky, Barrett told him afterwards, standing beside the hospital bed where Cross lay with his right arm immobilized in a temporary cast. Clean breaks, no nerve damage, no vascular compromise. You'll need pins, probably a plate, but you should regain full function with therapy. How long until I can train again? Barrett's expression shifted. Sergeant Cross, this isn't a sprained ankle. Bilateral forearm fracture. Best case, 6 months recovery. More likely 8 to 12. And that's assuming the investigation doesn't end your career first. The words hit harder than the break. Career over, 12 years as an instructor, 20 years in the Army. Training was not just his job, it was his identity, his penance. The only thing that gave his continued survival meaning after Kandahar took everyone he loved. Without it, what was he? Just another broken veteran with too many ghosts. A knock interrupted his spiral. The door opened. A full colonel entered, mid-50s, wearing eagles and an expression of weary authority. Colonel James Harlow, base commander. Cross had met him twice before, both times at memorial services. Sergeant Cross. Harlow pulled up a chair, ignoring protocol that said colonels did not sit at staff sergeant bedsides. How are you feeling? Like I got my arm broken by some captain who decided to make an example of me, sir. Harlow did not smile. Captain Reeves is Delta Force. Did you know that? Cross's stomach dropped. No, sir. Her file is 90% redacted. She's here for mandatory decompression after a classified deployment. Syria, I think. Maybe Jordan. The details are above my clearance. I approved her request to observe training as part of reintegration. I did not expect her to break one of my instructors. She corrected my technique. I reacted poorly. You attempted to strike a superior officer, Sergeant. That's not reacting poorly. That's assault, court-martial offense, career ender. Possibly prison time depending on how aggressive the prosecutor feels. Cross closed his eyes. 7 years running on rage and guilt. 7 years pushing soldiers harder than regulations allowed because he could not push hard enough to bring his daughter back. 7 years surviving when survival felt like punishment. Now it was over. What happens now, sir? Now I launch an investigation. Captain Derek Hudson from JAG will conduct interviews. Everyone who witnessed the incident gives statements. Medical records get reviewed. Then we decide consequences. Harlow stood, placed one hand on Cross's shoulder, the gesture brief but carrying weight. For what it's worth, I know your record. I know what you've sacrificed. But sacrifice doesn't give license to assault another soldier, especially not a decorated operator trying to prevent you from injuring trainees with faulty technique. Understood, sir. After Harlow left, Cross stared at the ceiling. Morphine had worn off enough that pain was becoming real again. That deep ache radiating from arm into shoulder, chest, throat. Physical pain he could handle. Simple. Finite. The other pain, the one living in his chest where Amy's absence carved out a vacuum nothing could fill, that pain was infinite. Hayes returned an hour later with coffee and news. Neither were good. Stories spreading fast, he said, settling into the chair Harlow vacated. By chow time, every soldier on base will have heard some version. Most versions aren't kind to you, Jack. Let me guess. Female operator destroys toxic male instructor who can't handle being corrected by a woman? Hayes winced. Something like that. Someone got video on their phone. It's gone viral. 50,000 views already. Cross laughed bitterly. Perfect. My career ends not with combat heroics, but with me getting my ass handed to me by a woman half my size. She's not half your size. And she's Delta, Jack. Tier 1. Best of the best. No shame losing to someone like that. I didn't lose, I got broken. Hayes drank his coffee. Let silence stretch. Finally asked the question they had both been avoiding. Why'd you swing at her? Cross did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice barely rose above a whisper. She looked at me the way Amy used to, like I was supposed to have all the answers. Like I was supposed to keep everyone safe. And I couldn't, Jerome. I couldn't keep Amy safe. Couldn't keep Sarah or Emily safe. Can't keep any of them safe. So when this captain shows up and tells me I'm doing it wrong, that the techniques I've been teaching are faulty, that everything I've done for 7 years has been useless. You snapped. I snapped. They sat in silence. Outside, Fort Garrison continued its rhythm, soldiers marching, vehicles moving, the machinery of military life grinding forward, indifferent to individual trauma, unconcerned with broken arms or broken hearts. The door opened again. Not a doctor, not a colonel, a chaplain, 75 years old, walking with a cane that clicked against linoleum. He wore the Silver Cross insignia of his office and an expression suggesting he had seen everything the world offered and somehow made peace with it all. Sergeant Cross, the voice was gentle but firm. My name is Robert Wade, installation chaplain. May I sit? Cross wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell this old man to take his sympathy and prayers and empty platitudes somewhere else. But Hayes was already standing, offering his chair, nodding at Cross in a way that said, "Play nice." Chaplain Wade lowered himself with the careful movements of someone whose body remembered wars fought before Cross was born, set his cane against the bed, fixed Cross with pale blue eyes that held infinite patience. "I'm not here to lecture, son. I'm here because I've been where you are. Not literally, I still have both arms, but spiritually, emotionally. I know what it's like carrying weight that's crushing you. With respect, Chaplain, you don't know anything about what I'm carrying." Wade smiled without happiness. "Korea, Chosin Reservoir, winter of 1950, 30 below zero. Chinese army surrounded us. 10,000 Marines and Army troops fighting 17 miles to the sea. 1,000 men died. I was a 20-year-old sergeant with a rifle company. Watched men freeze to death. Watched them die of wounds we couldn't treat. Watched the best of our generation disappear into snow that turned red and stayed red." He let those memories settle in the room like snow. 60 men in my company, 40 died, 20 survived. I was one of 20. For 50 years I asked why. Why them and not me? Why did I get to come home, marry, have children, live a life while they got body bags and grieving parents and names on memorial walls? Cross's throat tightened. "What did you figure out?" "That why is the wrong question. The right question is what now? I survived, not fair, not just what happened. So what do I do with this life I've been given? Waste it feeling guilty, or use it to honor the ones who didn't come home?" "Which did you choose?" "Both." Wade's smile turned sad. "Wasted 40 years feeling guilty, then finally started honoring them. Took a long time to learn the difference." Cross studied this souled man with his cane and faded uniform, and eyes that had witnessed frozen hell, yet still held kindness. "Why are you telling me this?" "You telling me?" "Because I read your file, Sergeant. Corporal Amy Lynn Cross, your daughter, 22 years old, killed in action November 2016. And before her, Sergeant Sarah Winters, Specialist Emily Crawford, all killed in the same IED strike, all under your command." Cross's chest constricted. "Get out! I know you've been punishing yourself. I know you train soldiers harder than regulations allow because you think if you just push hard enough, hurt them enough in training, maybe they'll survive when it counts. I know you wake every morning and drive to Amy's grave and apologize to a headstone that can't forgive you because you can't forgive yourself. Get out!" Louder now, heart hammering, broken arm throbbing, eyes burning. Wade stood, took his cane, walked to the door, stopped. "Captain Reeves has her own ghost, son. I can see it in her eyes, same way I see it in yours. She came here to decompress after something bad. You've been here drowning in something worse. What happened on that field today wasn't about technique. It was about two broken people colliding. Now you both get to decide what happens next." The chaplain left. Cross was alone with pain and thoughts, and the slow realization the old man was right. Maya had not attacked him. She defended herself when he attacked her. She did exactly what he had trained 600 soldiers to do. The irony cut deep. Night fell, hospital grew quiet, nurses made rounds, medications administered. Cross drifted in and out of sleep, dreams haunted by familiar ghosts. Amy at graduation, Sarah and Emily loading into the convoy, the flash, the shockwave, the moment everything ended. He woke at 0200 to find someone in his doorway, Maya Reeves, still in uniform, looking like she had not slept either. They stared across the dark room. Neither spoke. What was there to say? He had tried to hit her. She had broken his arm. The investigation would determine fault. Careers would end. Consequences could not be undone. Finally, Maya spoke quietly. "I didn't mean to break it that badly. I just reacted. Training took over. I didn't think, just moved." Cross wanted to be angry, wanted to tell her she had destroyed him, wanted to say she should have let him hit her instead of defending herself. But the words would not come, because beneath pain and pride and rage, he knew truth. This was not her fault. This was his fault. All of it. Every piece, from the convoy route chosen 7 years ago to the punch thrown this morning. His choices, his consequences. "I'm sorry." First time he had apologized to anyone in 7 years. "I shouldn't have swung at you. You were right. My technique was wrong. I was wrong. I'm sorry." Maya nodded slowly. Then came the question that changed everything. "Were you in Kandahar?" 2017. FOB Chapman extraction mission? Maya's expression flickered. Just for an instant, Classified. I remember that mission. Female Delta operator extracted 30 of us under fire. Moved like you moved today. Same efficiency, same precision. Was that you? Long silence, then quietly, I can neither confirm nor deny it. But it was you. Cross sat up straighter despite the pain. You saved my life 7 years ago, and today I tried to hit you for it. Maya said nothing, but her eyes confirmed what words could not. Cross lay back, mind reeling. The woman who broke his arm had saved his life, had pulled him out of hell when Sarah and Emily and Amy died, had given him 7 more years he probably did not deserve. And he had repaid her with violence. Before he could process that, Maya spoke again, her voice careful, controlled. Your file is interesting, Sergeant. 12 years as instructor, 600 soldiers trained, spotless record until today. But there's something strange. You voluntarily demoted from Master Sergeant to Staff Sergeant 5 years ago. Why does an E8 with 20 years service voluntarily drop 2 pay grades? Cross said nothing. And your deployment record. 3 tours Afghanistan, Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars. But after November 2016, you refused all promotion boards, refused command positions, insisted on staying as combatives instructor even though your experience qualified you for much higher roles. Why? Because being an E8 meant a desk. Being in command meant staff meetings and PowerPoints and watching other people train soldiers while I sat in an office pushing paper. I needed to be on the field, needed to teach, needed to make sure that no one else died the way they did. Cross's throat closed. Maya stepped into the room, stood at the foot of his bed. I read the after-action report from Kandahar. The IED strike that killed Corporal Cross, Sergeant Winters, and Specialist Crawford. You were in the lead vehicle, made the route selection based on intelligence that turned out to be compromised. You've been carrying that for 7 years, punishing yourself, punishing every soldier who reminds you of them. Especially female soldiers, Cross whispered. Especially the ones who look like Amy, like Sarah, like Emily. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Cross's world tilt. Your file has another interesting detail, Sergeant. It's mostly unredacted. Unit assignments, deployment dates, commendations, all there. You know what my file looks like? Cross looked at her, 90% black bars. Name, rank, service dates visible. Everything else classified. That's what a Delta Force operator's file looks like. Everything we do, everywhere we go, everyone we work with, it's all redacted. We're ghosts on paper. She paused, let that sink in. So why is your file so clean, Sergeant? No redactions, no classified deployments. You're listed as regular Army, conventional forces, standard infantry, career track. But I watched you move today. Watched you teach. Watched the way you carry yourself. You've had training beyond what standard infantry provides, haven't you? Cross felt ice in his stomach. I don't know what you're talking about, Captain. Don't you? Maya's voice stayed level but gained edge. Because I'm looking at a staff sergeant who moves like he's had close quarters battle training, who teaches techniques that aren't in standard Army combatives curriculum, who has muscle memory that suggests hundreds of hours of advanced hand-to-hand instruction, the kind of training that typically comes from special operations backgrounds. We're done here, Captain. No, we're not. Because here's what I think happened. I think you were special operations. Maybe not Delta, but something. Rangers, maybe SFOD. You did something or saw something or lost someone that made you request transfer to conventional forces, made you voluntarily demote, made you hide your real qualifications so you could stay on training fields instead of going back downrange with a Tier 1 unit. Maya leaned forward slightly. Am I close, Sergeant Cross? The room felt too small, too hot. Cross's heart hammered against his ribs. My service record is my service record, Captain. If you have questions about it, take them to S1. Maya straightened. I don't need S1. I just needed to see your reaction. And now I know. She turned to leave, stopped at the door. We're the same, you and me. Both running from ghosts. Both trying to outwork the guilt. Both broken in ways that don't show up on x-rays. The difference is I'm here because the Army ordered me to decompress. You're here because you've been decomposing for 7 years and nobody noticed. What's your point, Captain? My point is that Colonel Harlow wants to see both of us tomorrow at 0900, and he's going to offer us a choice. We can let this investigation destroy both our careers, or we can do something harder. What's harder than career destruction? Healing. Maya's voice was quiet. Real healing. The kind that makes you face what you've been running from instead of just punishing yourself for surviving it. She left. Cross lay in darkness, mind spinning. Tomorrow at 0900, everything would change. The investigation, the choice, the possibility that being broken was not the end, but maybe somehow the beginning of something else. Outside his window, Fort Garrison slept. But Jackson Cross lay awake, feeling 7 years of weight begin to shift, feeling the first terrifying stirrings of something that might, if he was very careful and very lucky and very willing to face the hell inside himself, eventually become hope. The breaking had happened. Now came everything after. Jackson Cross woke at 0600 to find Colonel Harlow standing at the foot of his hospital bed. Not sitting, standing, arms crossed, expression unreadable in the pale morning light filtering through Venetian blinds that had seen better days. The kind of stance that meant decisions had been made. Orders were coming. Lives were about to change. Get dressed, Sergeant. We have a meeting in 30 minutes. Cross sat up carefully, his broken arm throbbing despite the pain medication. Sir, I'm scheduled for another eval with Dr. Barrett at 0700. Barrett's been informed. He'll wait. This meeting is more important. Harlow turned and walked out, leaving Cross alone with questions and the growing certainty that whatever was about to happen would be worse than a court-martial. At least with a court-martial, you knew the rules, knew the process, knew how to prepare. This felt like something else entirely. He dressed one-handed, struggling with the BDU top, managing to get most of the buttons done before giving up on the rest. The cast on his right arm was temporary fiberglass, bulky and uncomfortable, a constant reminder of how completely his life had derailed in the space of 7 seconds. 7 seconds from respected instructor to broken invalid facing career destruction. The walk to Building 7 took longer than usual. His body was still recovering from surgery, still processing trauma, still trying to understand why it hurt everywhere when only his arm was broken. Shock did that, wrote checks on the whole body that took days to clear. Hayes met him halfway across the quad, walked beside him without speaking for 50 yards before finally breaking silence. I called Amy's grave, asked the groundskeeper to put fresh flowers there today. White roses, her favorite. Cross's throat tightened. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. Because you're about to walk into something hard and I wanted you to remember she'd want you to walk out the other side of it. They reached Building 7. Hayes squeezed Cross's shoulder once, brief and solid, then walked away. Brothers in arms did not need long goodbyes. They just needed to know someone had their back even when backs were against walls. The conference room was bigger than Cross expected. Windows on 2 sides overlooking the training fields where his career had ended yesterday. A long table that could seat 20, but currently held only 5. Colonel Harlow at the head, Captain Derek Hudson from JAG on the right, legal pad already covered in notes. Chaplain Wade on the left, his cane leaning against his chair. Dr. Lisa Brennan, the base psychiatrist, sitting beside Wade with a thick file folder that Cross recognized as his medical records. And at the far end, facing the door, Captain Maya Reeves. She looked like she had not slept. Eyes shadowed. Uniform perfect, but her face showing the kind of fatigue that came from spending all night thinking about consequences and finding no good answers. Cross took the empty chair beside Hudson, sat carefully, waited. Harlow folded his hands on the table. Sergeant Cross, Captain Reeves, thank you for coming. What I'm about to propose is unconventional, potentially career-ending for all of us if it fails. But I believe it's the right call. Hudson shifted his legal pad. Sir, for the record, I need to state that I advised against this course of action. The proper procedure is to complete the investigation, file charges as warranted, and proceed through the standard disciplinary process. Noted, Captain. But you're not the base commander. I am, and I'm making a command decision based on 28 years of service and the belief that sometimes the right thing to do is not the easy thing or the procedurally correct thing. It's the hard thing that might actually fix broken people instead of just punishing them. Cross felt his pulse quicken. What are you proposing, sir? Harlow pulled out 2 file folders, placed them on the table side by side. One was thin, maybe 20 pages. Standard personnel file. The other was thick, easily 200 pages, with red classification markings covering every visible edge. Sergeant Cross, your file shows exemplary service, 20 years enlisted, multiple deployments, Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, 12 years as a hand-to-hand combat instructor with a 97% pass rate among your trainees. Zero training fatalities under your supervision despite teaching high-risk techniques. Harlow opened the thin file, but it also shows something interesting. In 2018, you voluntarily requested demotion from Master Sergeant E8 to Staff Sergeant E6. That's a rare move. Usually happens when someone faces disciplinary action. But there's no disciplinary record. You just asked to drop 2 pay grades and go from a command position to a training position. Why? Cross said nothing. I'll tell you why. Because at E8, you would have been behind a desk, planning training, supervising other instructors, doing paperwork, and attending meetings. You wanted to be on the field, hands-on, teaching soldiers directly, because teaching gave you purpose after Kandahar took everything else. Sir, I don't see how this relates to the current situation. Harlow turned to the second file, the thick one with the red markings. Captain Reeves, your file is mostly classified, but the parts I can read are impressive. Delta Force selection at age 27, 8 years operational. Deployments to 17 countries I'm not allowed to name. Awards and commendations that are redacted. Kills that are redacted. Everything is redacted except your name, rank, and the fact that you're currently here for mandatory decompression after an operation that went sideways. Maya's expression did not change, but her hands tightened slightly on the table edge. You were in Damascus 3 months ago. I don't know the details. I don't have clearance for the details. But I know that out of a 4-person team, only you came back. I know that whatever happened there was bad enough that your command ordered 30 days decompression before you returned to operational status. And I know that you've been struggling. Captain, Cross interrupted, permission to speak freely. Granted. What does any of this have to do with my assault on Captain Reeves and her breaking my arm in response? Everything, Sergeant. Because you're both broken. You are both carrying weight that's crushing you. You're both using work to avoid dealing with trauma. And yesterday that avoidance collided on my training field in a way that injured you, traumatized 50 recruits, and created an incident that's now national news. Hudson cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, this sounds like you're about to propose therapy instead of appropriate disciplinary action. I'm proposing something harder than therapy, Captain, and definitely harder than court-martial. Harlow stood, walked to the window, looked out at Fort Garrison, waking up to another day of routine that would continue with or without any of them. Fort Benson, Montana. 2 weeks. Advanced Winter Survival Course designed for Special Operations candidates. Terrain is brutal. Weather is worse. The course has a 60% attrition rate, even among candidates who are physically healthy and mentally stable. He turned back to face them. You're going to complete it together, both of you, Sergeant Cross with his broken arm, Captain Reeves with whatever ghost she brought back from Damascus. You're going to spend 14 days in sub-freezing conditions, learning to depend on each other or die trying. The room went silent. Cross found his voice first. Sir, I can't complete a winter survival course with a broken arm. It's physically impossible. That's what everyone said about you surviving Kandahar. Yet here you are. Maya spoke quietly. Colonel, I'm scheduled to return to operational status in 23 days. This will delay my clearance. Good, because right now you're not fit for operational status. Dr. Brennan agrees. Don't you, Doctor? Lisa Brennan looked uncomfortable but nodded. Captain Reeves, your psych eval shows indicators of PTSD, hypervigilance, and emotional detachment consistent with acute combat stress. You're functional, but you're not healthy, and sending you back into high-stress operations without proper processing could result in mission compromise or worse. I completed the standard decompression protocol. I attended all required sessions. I followed every regulation. You followed the rules, Chaplain Wade said gently, but you didn't heal. There's a difference. Rules are what we do to satisfy bureaucracy. Healing is what we do to satisfy our souls. You've been satisfying bureaucracy for 3 months. Time to work on your soul. Cross looked from Harlow to Wade to Brennan to Maya. This is insane. You're sending us into a survival course that could kill us as an alternative to court-martial. No, Sergeant. I'm offering you a choice. You can accept Article 15 charges for assault on a superior officer. You'll face reduction in rank, forfeit of pay, and likely separation from service. Captain Reeves will face her own investigation for excessive force. Her career in Delta Force will probably survive, but it'll be damaged. Harlow leaned forward. Or you can go to Montana. Complete the course, come back and face me with proof that you can work together, depend on each other, and function as soldiers despite your respective trauma. If you succeed, I'll recommend leniency for both of you. If you quit, you both face maximum charges. If one of you quits and the other completes it, the one who completes gets leniency, and the one who quits gets the book thrown at them. Maya's voice was sharp. You're leveraging our careers to force us into an experimental therapy program that has no official sanction and could result in serious injury or death. That's coercion, Colonel. Yes, it is. And it's also the best chance both of you have at salvaging your careers and your lives. Because right now you're both drowning and you don't even know it. Hudson was taking rapid notes. Sir, I need to formally object to this. The JAG Corps exists precisely to prevent this kind of command overreach. Objection noted and overruled. Harlow sat back down. Here's how this works. You have until 1,300 hours today to decide. If you accept, transport leaves in 72 hours. That gives Sergeant Cross time for his surgical site to stabilize and reduces infection risk. Dr. Barrett will monitor him daily. If there are complications, the mission is scrubbed. You'll have 2 instructors at Montana, both veterans of the course, both aware of your injuries and limitations. They'll set reasonable accommodations. But the core challenge remains. Survive. Evade. Extract. Do it together or fail separately. What if we both say no? Cross asked. Then we proceed with the investigation. Statements are already being taken. Video evidence is being reviewed. By Friday, you'll both be facing formal charges. By Monday, you'll both be in legal proceedings that will define the rest of your lives in ways you won't like. The silence stretched. Outside, a formation of soldiers jogged past, their cadence call faint through the double-pane windows, life continuing, the Army grinding forward. Private First Class Emma Chen entered the room. She wore a fresh uniform and a wrist brace. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying, but her spine was straight and her voice was steady. Sir, permission to speak? Granted, Private. I'm one of the witnesses to yesterday's incident. Captain Hudson interviewed me this morning. He asked if I wanted to press charges against Sergeant Cross for injuring my wrist during training. I told him no. Hudson frowned. Private, you stated under oath that Sergeant Cross applied excessive force during a training demonstration. Yes, sir, he did. But I also stated that he's been the best instructor I've ever had. He pushed me harder than I thought I could handle, sometimes too hard. But I'm alive today because of his training. 2 months ago, during a field exercise, I encountered an aggressor role player who outweighed me by 80 pounds. I used the techniques Sergeant Cross taught me. I won, because he didn't let me quit when I wanted to. Chen turned to Cross. You scared me, Sergeant. Sometimes you made me cry when I was alone at night, wondering if I was tough enough. But you also made me a soldier. And yesterday, when Captain Reeves corrected you, when she broke your arm, I saw something I'd never seen from you before. What did you see, Private? I saw you hurting. Not physically. You've been hurt physically plenty of times. I saw you hurting inside the way I hurt inside when I think about whether I'm good enough. And I realized that maybe you push us so hard because someone pushed you hard and it still wasn't enough to save the people you loved. The room was silent. Chen's voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. I don't want you court-martialed, Sergeant Cross. I want you to heal. Because a healed Sergeant Cross will be an even better instructor than a broken one. And we need good instructors. We need people who care enough to push us, who've seen enough to teach us, who've survived enough to show us how. She faced Harlow. Sir, if my testimony matters, I'm asking you to let them go to Montana. Let them do something hard together. Let them come back better than they left. Thank you, Private Chen. You're dismissed. After she left, Harlow looked at Cross and Maya. So, what's it going to be? Cross stared at his broken arm. 2 weeks in Montana winter with this arm in a cast. Subfreezing temperatures, hostile terrain. Depending on a woman he had tried to hit and who had broken him in response. Every rational part of his brain screamed to refuse, to take the court-martial, to accept discharge and move on with what was left of his life. But then he thought about what Chen had said, about healing, about being better than broken. He thought about Amy's letter, the one he carried in a waterproof pouch in his left cargo pocket, the one he had finally read 3 years after her death, the one that said, if I don't come back, don't punish yourself. Punish leads to death. Growth leads to life. Choose life, Dad. I'll do it, Cross said quietly. I'll go to Montana. All eyes turned to Maya. She sat perfectly still for a long moment, her face unreadable, her Delta Force training making it impossible to see what was happening behind those eyes. Finally, she spoke. In Damascus, I lost 3 teammates because I made a decision based on incomplete intelligence. The operation was compromised. We had to extract under fire. I got out. They didn't. Her voice stayed level, but something flickered in her expression. For 3 months, I've been going through the motions, following protocols, attending sessions, checking boxes, telling myself I'm fine because I can still function. But Private Chen is right. Function isn't the same as healing. I've been functioning my way through life since Damascus, and it's not working. She looked at Cross. You tried to hit me. I broke your arm. Neither of us handled that situation well. But maybe that's because we're both past the point where we can handle anything well. Maybe we both need to stop pretending we're fine and start admitting we're broken. So that's a yes? Harlow asked. That's a yes. We'll go to Montana. We'll complete the course. And if we die trying, at least we'll die doing something that matters instead of drowning slowly in protocol and paperwork. Harlow nodded. Transport leaves at 0600 tomorrow. You'll fly to Malmstrom Air Force Base, then helicopter to Fort Benson. Instructors are Staff Sergeant Marcus Kane and Sergeant First Class Diana Torres. Both are SERE qualified. Both have completed the winter course multiple times. They know your situations. They'll accommodate your limitations. But they won't let you quit just because it's hard. The colonel stood. This meeting is concluded. Sergeant Cross, get your arm recasted by Dr. Barrett. Something more durable for field conditions. Captain Reeves, clear your quarters and pack light. Everything you need will be provided on site. Chaplain Wade will brief you both on mental preparation. As they filed out, Wade touched Cross's shoulder. Walk with me, son. They moved slowly down the corridor, Wade's cane clicking rhythmically on tile that had been polished to a shine by generations of soldiers who had walked these halls before them. You know what the hardest part of Chosen was? Wade asked. The cold, the fighting, the waiting. We'd dig in for the night, expecting the Chinese to attack. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But every night we'd wait in that frozen hell wondering if this was the night we'd die. The not knowing was worse than the actual fighting. Because in combat, you could act. In waiting, you could only endure. I'm not sure I follow, Chaplain. Montana will be hard, Wade said. Physically brutal. But the hard part won't be the cold or the hunger or the physical challenges. The hard part will be the quiet moments when you're stuck in a shelter with Captain Reeves and there's nothing to do but think. Nothing to distract you from the voices in your head that tell you you're not good enough, you're not strong enough. You should have died instead of them. How did you survive those moments in Korea? I didn't. Not at first. I let the voices win for 40 years. But eventually I learned that the voices lie. They tell you that surviving is a sin when really surviving is a responsibility. You survived for a reason, Sergeant Cross. Time to stop asking why and start asking what for. They reached the medical building. Wade stopped, leaned on his cane, fixed Cross with those pale blue eyes that had witnessed hell and somehow still held light. Captain Reeves is carrying ghosts just like you. Her 3 teammates in Damascus, your daughter and Sarah and Emily in Kandahar. You're both running from the same thing. In Montana, you'll have to stop running. You'll have to turn and face what's chasing you. And that will be harder than any physical challenge the course throws at you. What if I can't do it, Chaplain? What if the voices are too loud? Then you lean on her. And she leans on you. That's what surviving together means. Not that you're both strong all the time, but that when one of you is weak, the other is strong enough to carry both. That's what Amy would want for you. Not constant strength, just the courage to be weak when you need to be and strong when someone else needs you to be. Wade turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. In Korea, I watched a Marine lieutenant freeze during an attack. Literally freeze. Stopped moving, stopped fighting, just stood there while bullets flew. His sergeant grabbed him, threw him in a foxhole, and fought for both of them until the lieutenant came back to himself. Later, I asked the sergeant why he didn't leave the lieutenant to die. You know what he said? Cross shook his head. Because tomorrow it might be me who freezes, and I want someone to fight for me too. Wade smiled. You're going to have moments in Montana when you freeze, when the pain or the cold or the memories are too much. Don't be ashamed. Just let Captain Reeves fight for both of you until you can fight again. And when she freezes, you do the same for her. The chaplain walked away, his cane clicking into the distance. leaving Cross alone with thoughts that felt heavier than the cast on his arm. Dr. Barrett was waiting in the orthopedic clinic. He had Cross's x-rays up on a light board and an expression that suggested he thought everyone involved in this Montana idea was certifiably insane. Your radius and ulna are held together with 2 pins and a plate, Sergeant. Normally, I'd have you in a cast for 6 weeks minimum with strictly limited activity. Instead, I'm about to put you in a field cast and send you into subfreezing wilderness, where any number of things could go catastrophically wrong. Is this the part where you tell me I'm going to die? No. This is the part where I tell you that if you re-injure this arm, if you damage the surgical site, if you compromise the healing process, you could end up with permanent disability. Nerve damage, loss of function, chronic pain, your career as an instructor would definitely be over. Barrett pulled out a different kind of cast, waterproof fiberglass reinforced with carbon fiber. Lighter than the temporary one, more durable. This is what we use for combat casualties who refuse medical evacuation. It's designed to take abuse, but it has limits. You need to understand those limits. No heavy lifting, no using this arm to catch yourself if you fall, no direct impacts. Basically treat it like it's not there and depend on your left arm for everything. For 2 weeks? For however long it takes your bones to knit, which will be at least 6 weeks under normal conditions. In Montana's cold, possibly longer. Cold slows healing. Stress slows healing. Lack of proper nutrition slows healing. You're about to experience all three. Barrett began applying the new cast with practiced efficiency. So why are you doing this? Is facing court-martial really so bad that you'd risk permanent disability to avoid it? It's not about avoiding court-martial, Cross said quietly. It's about, I've been stuck for 7 years, Doc. Stuck in the day my daughter died. Stuck in the moment I failed her. Stuck watching every female soldier and seeing Amy's face and training them so hard because if I just push hard enough, maybe the next one will survive. Maybe the next one won't die because I wasn't good enough. And Montana will unstick you? Maybe. Or maybe it'll kill me. But either way, I'll be moving forward instead of running in place. That's worth the risk. Barrett finished the cast, tapped it with his knuckles to check the seal. You're cleared for travel. But Sergeant, I want you to understand something. Healing isn't just physical. The bones in your arm will knit together over the next 6 weeks, whether you're in Montana or sitting in your quarters watching Netflix. But the other healing, the kind Chaplain Wade talks about, that's harder. That requires you to actually face what you've been avoiding. Are you ready for that? Cross stood, tested the weight of the new cast. It felt lighter, stronger, more like armor than injury. No, Doc, I'm not ready, but I'm going anyway. He spent the afternoon preparing, cleared his quarters, packed the essentials that would fit in a small duffel, called Hayes and asked him to keep putting flowers on Amy's grave while he was gone. Avoided thinking about what 2 weeks in Montana winter would actually entail because thinking about it would give his rational brain time to override his decision. At 1700, he found himself outside the base chapel. The door was unlocked. The interior was quiet and empty, lit only by afternoon sun filtering through stained glass windows that turned light into colors that had no names in nature. He sat in the back pew, stared at the altar, tried to remember the last time he had prayed. Amy's funeral, maybe, or the night before her deployment when she had been so excited and he had been so proud, and neither of them had known she had 6 months to live. God and Jackson Cross were not on speaking terms, had not been since Kandahar. Cross figured if God existed, he had made his position clear when that IED detonated. You live, everyone you love dies. Figure it out yourself. But sitting alone in the chapel, Cross found words forming anyway. Not prayers exactly, more like thoughts spoken into the empty air in case anyone was listening. I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you care. I don't know anything anymore except that I'm broken and I don't know how to fix myself. So if you're there, if you're listening, if you give a damn about one broken sergeant who's about to do something stupid in Montana, maybe you could help. Not asking for miracles, just asking for the strength to face what I've been running from. And maybe help me not screw this up for Captain Reeves. She's got enough problems without carrying mine too. The chapel stayed silent. No divine answers, no burning bush, just late afternoon light and dust motes floating in colored air. Cross stood to leave and found Maya Reeves sitting in a pew 3 rows ahead. He had not heard her enter. Delta Force operators moved like ghosts. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Long enough." She turned to look at him. "I'm not good at this either. The praying, the hoping, the asking for help, but Wade suggested I try. Said sometimes speaking things out loud makes them real in a way that thinking them doesn't." Cross moved forward, sat in the pew across the aisle from her. "What did you say?" "That I'm scared, that I don't know if I can do this, that Damascus broke something in me that I don't know how to fix, that I came back physically whole but mentally shattered, and I've been pretending for 3 months that function equals healing, when really it just equals delayed collapse." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap. "I killed a woman in Damascus, an informant. She betrayed us, compromised the operation, got 3 of my teammates killed. And when I found her, when I had her at gunpoint, I should have arrested her, should have extracted her for interrogation, should have followed protocol. But you didn't. I executed her. 7 shots, not a clean kill, revenge. And I've been telling myself for 3 months that it was justified, that she deserved it, that anyone would have done the same. But the truth is I didn't kill her because it was tactically sound. I killed her because I was angry and hurting, and I wanted someone to pay for my teammates dying." Cross understood that completely. "After Kandahar, I punished every female soldier who reminded me of Amy. Not because they deserved it, because I couldn't punish myself enough, and I needed somewhere to put the rage." They sat in silence, 2 broken soldiers in an empty chapel, confessing sins to each other because confessing to God felt too hard, and confessing to chaplains felt too official, and confessing to anyone else felt impossible. Finally, Maya spoke again. "In Montana, we're going to be stuck together for 2 weeks, no escape, no distractions, just cold and hunger and exhaustion and each other. I need to know something before we go." "What?" "Can I trust you? You tried to hit me yesterday. I broke your arm in response. We have every reason to hate each other. But if we're going to survive Montana, I need to know you won't try to hurt me again when we're alone in the wilderness." Cross looked at his casted arm. "I tried to hit you because you represented everything I hate about myself. The failure, the inadequacy, the knowledge that I wasn't good enough to save the people I loved. But you're not the enemy, Captain. I am. I've been my own worst enemy for 7 years, and it's time I stopped fighting the wrong battles." He met her eyes. "You can trust me. I won't hurt you. And if I freeze, if the voices get too loud, if I start falling apart, you can count on me to tell you. Because Wade's right. We're going to have to fight for each other. And I'd rather fight alongside you than against you." Maya nodded slowly. "Then we have a deal. We go to Montana, we complete the course, we come back healed or at least less broken, and we do it together because neither of us can do it alone." They stood, walked to the chapel entrance together. Outside, Fort Garrison was transitioning to evening, the base winding down. Soldiers heading to chow or quarters or wherever they went when duty hours ended and personal time began. Tomorrow morning at 0600, their lives would change. For better or worse, healed or destroyed, together or separately. But tonight, they were just 2 broken people who had made a decision to stop running and start facing what chased them through nightmares and memories in the hollow spaces where dead loved ones used to live. Cross walked Maya to her quarters, stopped outside the door. "See you at 0600. See you then? And Sergeant, thank you." "For what?" "For not quitting, for choosing the hard thing, for being willing to go to hell with me on the hope that we might find a way out the other side." She went inside. Cross walked back to his own quarters, sat on his bunk, pulled out Amy's letter, read it again in the fading light. "Dad, if I don't come back, know this. You trained me to survive. If I die, it's not your fault. It's war's fault. Train others like you trained me. Love them like you loved me. Don't punish them for my choice. Punish leads to death. Growth leads to life. Choose life, Dad. Always choose life." He folded the letter carefully, put it back in the waterproof pouch, laid down and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, they flew to Montana. Tomorrow, the real test began. Not of physical endurance, but of whether 2 broken people could find the courage to be broken together instead of suffering alone. Jackson Cross closed his eyes. For the first time in 7 years, his last thought before sleep was not guilt or grief or the endless replay of an IED detonating on a dusty Afghan road. It was hope, fragile, terrifying. but hope nonetheless. 3 days after accepting Colonel Harlow's chinaman, Jackson Cross stood on the tarmac at Fort Garrison, watching the C-130 transport aircraft being prepped for departure. His broken arm had stabilized. Dr. Barrett had cleared him that morning after 72 hours of monitoring, showed no infection, no complications, just steady healing that would continue in Montana's brutal cold. The C-130 lurched through turbulence at 12,000 feet, and Jackson Cross felt his stomach drop along with the plane's altitude. Across from him, Maya Reeves sat strapped into the canvas bench seat with her eyes closed, breathing deep and controlled. Delta Force operators did not get airsick. They just looked like they were meditating while their bodies processed stress that would flatten normal humans. Cross's broken arm throbbed in rhythm with the engine homes. The new cast felt heavier at altitude, or maybe that was just his imagination trying to give him excuses to quit before they even landed. Staff Sergeant Marcus Kane sat beside the loadmaster, reviewing equipment manifests on a weatherproof tablet. Kane was 52 years old, Vietnam-era veteran despite being too young for Vietnam, career special operations, the kind of soldier who had done things in dark places that never made it into official records. His face was all hard angles and old scars. His eyes held the particular emptiness that came from seeing too much death and making peace with it. Sergeant First Class Diana Torres sat across from Kane, similarly absorbed in preparation. 41, 2 decades in the Army, SERE-qualified instructor with a reputation for being harder than the terrain she taught in. She had grown up in Montana, knew the land the way most people knew their own living rooms. If anyone could keep 2 broken soldiers alive in winter wilderness, it was Torres. Kane looked up from his tablet. Sergeant Cross, Captain Reeves, listen up. They both focused on him. Professional attention. The kind soldiers gave when they knew instructions might mean the difference between living and dying. Fort Benson sits at 6,400 feet elevation in the Beartooth Mountains. Current temperature is -18 Fahrenheit. Wind chill takes that down to -40. We've got 6 feet of snow on the ground with more forecast. Visibility is limited. Wildlife is active and hungry. Grizzlies should be hibernating, but climate change has made their patterns unpredictable. Torres continued the brief. You'll have standard survival gear, fire starter, water purification tablets, emergency beacon that you are not to use unless you're literally dying. No food except what you can forage or trap. No shelter except what you build. No communication except with each other. The course runs 14 days, Kane said. You'll be given a starting point and an extraction point 20 miles apart as the crow flies. Actual distance through mountain terrain is closer to 35 miles. You need to reach extraction by 1400 hours on day 14, or you fail. Maya spoke for the first time since takeoff. What are the accommodation parameters for Sergeant Cross's injury? Torres' expression did not change. He gets to use his left arm. Everything else is standard. If he can't complete a task one-armed, you help him. If you can't help him, you both figure out a different approach. Accommodation doesn't mean easier, it means you adapt. And if we fail, Cross asked, then you get extracted, you go back to Fort Garrison, and you face maximum charges for your respective incidents. Assault for you, excessive force for the captain. Both career-ending, both likely resulting in discharge under less than honorable conditions. The plane hit another pocket of turbulence. Cross's stomach lurched again. He focused on breathing, focused on the fact that in 30 minutes they would be on the ground, and there would be no more time for doubt or fear or the rational part of his brain that screamed this was insane. Kane leaned forward. I'm going to tell you both something that's not in the official briefing. This course has a 60% attrition rate for fully healthy special operations candidates. You're going in with a broken arm and unprocessed trauma. Statistically, you have about a 15% chance of completing this together. Maya's eyes opened. Then why are you wasting your time with us? Because Colonel Harlow asked us to. And because 20 years ago I was where you are. Broken, angry, drowning in ghosts. Someone gave me a chance to heal through hardship instead of falling apart through inaction. I'm paying that forward. He stood, gripping overhead straps as the plane descended. But understand this, I'm not here to save you. Torres and I will monitor your progress. We'll intervene if you're about to die. Otherwise, you're on your own. You save yourselves or you don't get saved. The loadmaster called out 2 minutes to landing. Cross-checked his gear for the fourth time. Rucksack with minimal supplies. Cold weather clothing that was warm but not warm enough. Boots that were good but not good enough. Everything designed to be just barely adequate so that survival required skill and will rather than superior equipment. They landed hard on a strip of cleared mountain terrain that served as Fort Benson's airfield. The cold hit like a physical force when the ramp dropped. -18 felt like -80 after the relatively warm interior of the aircraft. Cross's breath crystallized instantly. His broken arm went from throbbing to screaming in the span of 10 seconds. "Welcome to Montana," Torres said. "Try not to die." They were driven by truck to the starting point. Dense pine forest that looked like every survival movie Cross had ever seen except colder and more hostile and completely real. The trees were heavy with snow. The ground was buried under drifts that reached waist-high in places. The sky was that particular shade of gray that promised more snow and probably a blizzard and definitely misery. Kane handed them each a map and compass. "Your extraction point is here." He indicated a spot marked with red ink. "Old logging camp, abandoned since the 90s. If you reach it by deadline, we'll pick you up. If you don't, we'll come find your bodies in the spring." He paused. "Any questions?" Cross looked at Maya. She looked back at him. Some form of unspoken communication passed between them. Not words, not even understanding. Just acknowledgement that they were about to walk into hell together, and neither of them was allowed to quit. "No questions," Maya said. Kane and Torres climbed back in the truck. The engine noise faded into distance. Then there was only wind and cold and the vast indifferent silence of wilderness that did not care if they lived or died. Cross pulled out the map, studied the terrain. 20 miles linear distance through mountain wilderness in 14 days. That was roughly 1.5 miles per day. Should be manageable even with a broken arm. Except it was not linear. The route crossed 3 mountain ridges, dropped into 2 valleys, required fording at least one river that might be frozen or might be running too fast to freeze. Required navigating through terrain that was actively trying to kill them. "We should move," Maya said. "We've got maybe 6 hours of daylight. Need to find shelter and build it before dark." Cross nodded, shouldered his pack. The weight distribution was wrong with only one functional arm. The straps cut into his shoulders. His broken arm hung useless in its cast, a constant reminder of failure and the woman who had put him in this position and the choices that had led to this frozen mountain. They walked. The first hour was manageable. The terrain was relatively flat. The snow was packed enough to walk on without post-holing through to hip depth. Cross focused on breathing, on putting one foot in front of the other, on not thinking about how much his arm hurt, or how cold he already was, or how completely insane this entire situation had become. The second hour was harder. The terrain started climbing. The packed snow gave way to powder that required high steps and constant effort. Cross's lungs burned, his legs screamed. His broken arm felt like someone was driving hot nails through the bone with every jarring step. Maya moved ahead of him, breaking trail, her Delta Force conditioning making this look easier than it was. But Cross could see the tension in her shoulders, could see how carefully she chose each step, could see that she was hurting too, just hiding it better. The third hour broke him, not physically. His body was still moving. But mentally, emotionally, the weight of 7 years and a broken arm and the absolute certainty that he was going to fail crashed down on him all at once. He stopped walking, stood in knee-deep snow, stared at nothing. Maya was 20 yards ahead before she noticed he had stopped. She turned back. "Sergeant?" Cross said nothing. Could not speak, could not move, could not do anything except stand there and feel the weight crushing him. Maya came back, stood in front of him. Her face was red from cold and exertion, but her eyes were clear. "Cross, talk to me. I can't do this." The words came out flat, empty. "I can't walk 35 miles through mountains with a broken arm. I can't build shelters. I can't start fires. I can't do any of this. I'm going to fail and take you down with me, and we're both going to get discharged, and none of this will have mattered." Maya grabbed his shoulders, hard enough to hurt, hard enough to break through the fog. "Listen to me. You're right, you can't do this. Not alone. But you're not alone. I'm here. And I can do the things you can't. You're going to do the things I can't. And together we're going to complete this course or die trying. But we are not quitting on day one because you're having a moment of doubt. What can I possibly do that you can't? Navigate your conventional army. You've spent 20 years reading maps and using terrain. I'm Delta. I had GPS and satellite imagery and tech support. My land navigation skills are adequate but not expert. You're expert, so you navigate. I'll break trail. You'll tell me where to go. We divide the labor based on capability and we keep moving. Cross felt something shift. Not healing, not even hope. Just the faint possibility that maybe, somehow, they might not fail in the first 6 hours. Okay, show me the map. They studied it together, identified a ridgeline that would give them high ground and potential shelter from wind, plotted a route that avoided the steepest climbs, made a plan that was probably inadequate, but was better than standing still and freezing to death. They moved. By the time they reached the ridgeline, daylight was fading and Cross was operating on pure stubborn refusal to quit. His arm was past pain into numbness. His legs felt like rubber. His lungs burned with every breath of air so cold it hurt to inhale. Maya found a spot where pine trees grew close enough to provide natural windbreak. Together they cleared snow. Together they built a shelter using branches and Cross's one-arm knot tying and Maya's ability to do everything else. It was not pretty. It was barely functional. But it would keep them alive through the night. Fire was harder. The wood was wet. The tinder was frozen. Cross's fingers were too numb to work the fire starter effectively. After 20 minutes of failure, Maya took over, got a spark, nursed it to flame, built it to a small fire that provided more psychological comfort than actual warmth, but was better than nothing. They ate protein bars that tasted like cardboard and hurt to chew because their jaws were half frozen. They melted snow for water. They did not talk because talking required energy they did not have. Night fell, temperature dropped. The fire was too small to keep them truly warm. They huddled close together for shared body heat. Professional soldiers who understood that survival sometimes required intimacy without sexuality, warmth without romance. Cross woke every hour shivering. His broken arm throbbed. His whole body ached. But he was alive. They were both alive. Day 1 was complete. Day 2 was worse. They woke to discover 6 inches of new snow had fallen overnight. Their fire was buried. Their shelter was collapsing under the weight. They dug out, packed up, moved on because stopping meant dying. The terrain climbed sharply. Cross's one-armed balance made steep slopes nearly impossible. Twice he fell. Twice Maya helped him up. Twice he wanted to quit, and twice he kept moving because quitting meant she failed too, and he would not do that to her. By afternoon, they reached a valley. A frozen creek ran through it. Maya tested the ice, declared it thick enough to walk on. They were halfway across when Cross heard the crack. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet sound that meant the ice was failing, and they had seconds to act. "Move!" Maya's voice cut through the cold. "Back to shore now!" Cross tried to run. His boots slipped. His balance failed. The ice gave way beneath him. The water was so cold it stopped being water and became liquid knife blades that cut through every layer of clothing and found skin and drove straight to bone. Cross gasped, tried to breathe, felt his broken arm go completely numb as shock set in. Maya was there, on solid ice, lying flat to distribute her weight, reaching for him with one hand while anchoring herself with the other. "Grab my hand!" Cross reached up with his good arm. Their fingers locked. Maya pulled. Cross kicked. The weight of his wet clothing tried to drag him under, but Maya's grip was iron and she would not let go. She hauled him onto solid ice, dragged him toward shore, got him onto snow-covered ground where they were safe from drowning, but not from hypothermia. "Strip. Now." Maya was already pulling off his jacket. "Everything wet has to come off or you'll die." "Too cold. Can't move." "Then I'll do it." She stripped his wet layers with professional efficiency. No modesty, no hesitation, just survival. Then she pulled emergency blankets from her pack, wrapped him, started friction on his arms and legs to restore circulation. Cross's teeth chattered so hard he thought they would break. His whole body shook. His mind felt foggy. He knew these were signs of hypothermia, knew he was in danger, could not make his body cooperate with what his brain knew. Maya built a fire, bigger than their previous attempts, hot enough to hurt. She positioned Cross as close as possible without burning him, fed the fire, monitored his condition with the practiced eye of someone who had done cold weather survival training more times than she could count. It took an hour before Cross stopped shaking. Took another hour before he could speak without his teeth chattering. Thank you for pulling me out. Maya did not look at him, just kept feeding the fire. In Damascus, I lost 3 teammates because I couldn't reach them fast enough. I'm not losing you too. It was the first time she had volunteered information about Damascus. Cross understood that breaking through ice had broken through something in her too. What happened there? If you want to talk about it. She was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Wind moved through trees. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Finally, she spoke. We were extracting an informant, woman named Elena Martinez. She had intel on a weapons trafficking network. Time sensitive. High value. My team went in, 4 of us. 2 vehicles. Elena was supposed to meet us at a safe house. Her voice stayed level, but her hands gripped her knees tight. She was already there when we arrived. With 12 hostiles, the safe house was compromised. We walked into an ambush. My team leader took 3 rounds in the first 10 seconds. Our medic died trying to drag him to cover. Our communications specialist lasted maybe 2 minutes before a grenade took him. And you? I got out, found cover, returned fire, bought enough time for extraction to arrive. But by then everyone was dead except me and Elena. She was wounded, trying to crawl away. I had her at gunpoint. She was begging, saying they threatened her family, saying she had no choice. Maya's voice went flat. I put 7 rounds in her. Center mass. No mercy, no hesitation. I executed her for betraying my team, and then I walked to the extraction bird and filed a report that said she died in crossfire. Nobody questioned it. Nobody investigated. I got a medal and a mandatory decompression period, and everyone pretended I was fine. But you're not fine. No, I'm not. I killed a woman who was probably coerced, who might have had valuable intelligence, who deserved a trial, not an execution. And I did it because I was angry and hurting and wanted someone to pay. Just like you've been making female soldiers pay for your daughter's death. They sat in silence. 2 broken people sharing confessions in a frozen valley because the ice had broken and the barriers had broken and there was no point hiding anymore. Cross spoke quietly. Amy wrote me a letter before she deployed. I didn't read it until after her funeral. She said if she died, it wasn't my fault. She said I should train other soldiers with love, not punishment. She said choose life, not death. Choose growth, not guilt. He pulled the waterproof pouch from his pocket, showed Maya the letter, worn from being read 1,000 times. I've been carrying this for 7 years, reading it every morning. And every morning I choose the opposite of what she asked. I choose death. I choose guilt. I choose to punish myself and everyone who reminds me of her. Why? Because choosing life means accepting she's gone, means letting go, means moving forward. And moving forward feels like betrayal. Maya looked at the letter, at Amy's handwriting preserved behind plastic. Is this what she would want? You frozen in grief? You punishing innocent soldiers? You breaking yourself because you couldn't save her? No. Then stop betraying her by refusing to honor her last wish. The words hit like a physical blow. Cross felt tears freezing on his face, felt 7 years of weight starting to shift, felt the possibility that maybe, somehow, he could let Amy rest instead of carrying her ghost like chains. They stayed by the fire until Cross's clothes dried, until night fell again, until they had no choice but to sleep or freeze. Day 3 through 7 blurred together. Constant movement, constant cold, constant challenge that required everything they had and more. Cross learned to navigate one-handed, learned to build shelters using his body as a brace, learned to let Maya do the things he could not do without feeling like less of a man. Maya learned to ask for help, learned that strength was not always individual, learned that the woman she had executed in Damascus was going to haunt her until she forgave herself, and that forgiveness was harder than any physical challenge this mountain could offer. They talked, not constantly, but in the quiet moments when fire burned and exhaustion made barriers impossible to maintain. They shared stories. Cross told Maya about Amy's childhood, about teaching her to throw a football, about watching her graduate basic training with pride so fierce it hurt. Maya told Cross about growing up with an abusive father, about joining the army to prove women were not weak, about Delta Force selection and 8 years of operations, and the moment in Damascus when she realized revenge did not bring peace. On day 8, they summited the highest ridge, stood at 7,800 feet of elevation and wind that cut like razors and looked out at terrain that seemed infinite and hostile and completely indifferent to their existence. Cross felt something break loose in his chest, not his ribs, something deeper. The weight he had been carrying, the chains he had wrapped around his own soul. I forgive myself. The words came out quiet. Nearly lost in wind, I forgive myself for surviving when Amy died. I forgive myself for the route I chose and the intelligence I trusted and the decisions I made. None of it was malicious. All of it was human. And I choose to honor Amy by living instead of dying slowly through guilt. Maya stood beside him. I forgive myself for executing Elena, for being human in a moment that required me to be perfect, for 7 shots when one would have been enough, for rage that was justified but not righteous. They stood together on the mountain and spoke forgiveness into wind that carried it away. Not to God, not to the dead, just to themselves, because forgiveness began with the person in the mirror. Day 9, they descended into the final valley. Day 10, they found the river. It was not frozen. It was running fast and deep and 50 feet across and directly in their path. We could go around, Maya said, studying the map. Add 2 days to our route, miss our deadline. Or we could cross. Cross studied the water. It's going to be cold, dangerous, but it's only 50 feet. We rope together, move slow, make it across. With your broken arm. With my broken arm and your help, we do this together or not at all. They stripped to base layers, tied their rope between them, wade into water so cold it made the previous ice breaking feel warm by comparison. Cross's broken arm went immediately numb, his legs cramped, his lungs seized. Maya was ahead of him, setting the pace, testing footing, keeping them both upright through current that wanted to sweep them downstream and drown them in mountain runoff. Halfway across, Cross's foot slipped. He went under, felt the current grab him, felt the rope go tight, felt Maya's weight anchoring him as she braced and held and refused to let him go. He surfaced, gasped, kept moving. They reached the far bank, collapsed on frozen ground, shaking so hard they could not speak, but alive, together, unbroken by a river that should have killed them. Day 11 through 13 were a countdown. They were close. The extraction point was achievable. They were going to make it. Day 14 dawned clear and cold. 5 miles to the extraction point, 8 hours to deadline. They were exhausted, hungry. Cross's arm was swollen inside its cast. Maya had frostbite on 3 fingers. Neither of them cared. They walked. The old logging camp appeared through trees at 13:30 hours, 30 minutes before deadline. Collapsed buildings that had not seen humans in decades. And parked beside the largest structure, Marcus Kane's truck. Kane and Torres stood waiting. They did not cheer, did not congratulate, just nodded once with the kind of respect that veterans gave other veterans who had done hard things. You made it, Kane said simply. Cross and Maya stood side by side, filthy, frozen, transformed. We did. The drive back to Fort Benson was quiet. The flight to Fort Garrison was quieter. By the time they landed, it was evening, and Cross felt like he had been gone years instead of 2 weeks. Colonel Harlow met them at the hangar, took one look at them and nodded. My office, tomorrow morning, 0900. Staff Sergeant Jerome Hayes was waiting outside the hangar. He did not say anything, just handed Cross a photograph. Amy's grave. Fresh white roses. Every week for 14 days, Hayes had kept his promise. Thank you, brother, Cross said quietly. Hayes squeezed his shoulder once. Welcome home. They cleaned up, slept in real beds for the first time in 14 days, woke to find the investigation had concluded in their absence. Harlow's office, same conference table, same chairs, different energy. The investigation found that Sergeant Cross initiated assault. Captain Reeves responded with appropriate force given her training and the threat level. However, given the circumstances and the successful completion of your Montana training, I'm recommending the following. He slid papers across the table. Sergeant Cross, Article 15 for conduct unbecoming. You'll accept reduction to E5, forfeit of half pay for 3 months, and mandatory assignment to a new role. You will no longer serve as a combatives instructor. Instead, you'll be assigned to the newly created Veteran Wellness Center as a peer counselor. You'll help soldiers process combat trauma. You'll do the work Chaplain Wade has been doing, but from the perspective of someone who's lived it recently. Cross looked at the papers. It was punishment, but it was also purpose. a way to honor Amy by helping others instead of hurting them. I accept, sir. Harlow turned to Maya. Captain Reeves, no charges. Your actions were justified self-defense. However, your Delta Force Command has made a decision regarding your operational status. Maya's face went carefully neutral. And? You're being reassigned, no longer field operations. You'll serve as an instructor at Fort Bragg, advanced tactics, ethical decision-making under pressure. You'll teach the next generation of operators how to make hard choices without losing their humanity. Maya absorbed this. It was not what she had planned, not what she had trained for, but it was what she needed. I accept, sir. Harlow stood. You're both dismissed. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You chose the hard thing. You survived it. You came back better than you left. That's what soldiers do. 3 months later, Jackson Cross stood in front of 15 combat veterans at the Veteran Wellness Center. All of them struggling with PTSD, all of them wondering if healing was possible. My name is Jackson Cross. 7 years ago, I lost my daughter in Afghanistan. I spent the next 7 years punishing myself and everyone around me. Then I met someone who was as broken as me. We went to Montana. We nearly died. And we learned that healing is not about being strong all the time. It's about being honest about weakness and letting others carry you until you can walk again. He showed them Amy's letter. Read it aloud. Choose life. Choose growth. Choose to honor the fallen by living well instead of dying slowly. Private Emma Chen sat in the back row. She had transferred to the wellness center as Cross's assistant. She smiled, nodded. She was healing too. At Fort Bragg, Maya Reeves stood in front of 30 Delta Force candidates. All of them hard, all of them thinking they were unbreakable. I'm Colonel Maya Reeves. 3 years ago, I executed an informant in cold blood because I was angry about losing my team. I spent 3 years pretending that function equals healing. Then I met a sergeant who tried to hit me. I broke his arm. We went to Montana together. We nearly died, and we learned that strength is not about being perfect. It's about admitting when you're broken and doing the work to heal. She told them about Damascus, about 7 shots, about forgiveness, about choosing to honor the fallen by becoming someone they would be proud of. On a Sunday morning, Jackson Cross drove to Arlington Memorial Gardens, placed flowers at Amy's grave, but this time he did not apologize. Morning, baby girl. I'm doing the work you asked me to do, training with love instead of punishment, choosing life instead of death. I'm not perfect, still struggle some days, but I'm moving forward, and I think that would make you proud. He stood, walked to his truck, drove to the wellness center where 15 veterans waited for someone who understood their pain and could show them the path through it. On that same morning, Maya Reeves ran through Fort Bragg at 0600. 5 miles thinking about Elena Martinez, about forgiveness, about second chances. She finished her run and headed to the training facility where 30 candidates waited to learn that being a warrior was not just about winning battles. It was about knowing which battles to fight and which to walk away from and which to fight inside yourself. That afternoon, Chaplain Robert Wade sat in his office, received a visit from Colonel Harlow. It worked, Harlow said. Your crazy idea of sending 2 broken soldiers into Montana winter. It actually worked. Wade smiled. It always works. When you give broken people a reason to heal and partners to heal with, we're not meant to suffer alone. We're meant to carry each other. 4 years later, Jackson Cross was promoted to Sergeant First Class. The Veteran Wellness Center had expanded to serve 300 soldiers per year. 0 suicides among participants. 92% return to duty rate for soldiers who completed the program. Emma Chen was promoted to Sergeant First Class at age 26, making her one of the youngest in her cohort to reach E7. She credited Cross's harsh but effective training and Maya's example of strength through vulnerability. Maya Reeves retired from the Army as a lieutenant colonel after distinguished service. She took a position teaching at West Point. Ethics and leadership. She used her Damascus story as a case study in moral injury and redemption. Chaplain Robert Wade passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 years after Cross and Maya returned from Montana. He was 87 years old. The funeral was held on a crisp October morning at Fort Garrison's main chapel. Over 2,000 soldiers attended, filling every pew and spilling onto the grounds outside, a testament to 6 decades of service. Cross and Maya both spoke at the service, their voices steady despite the weight of loss. They told the assembled crowd about a Korean War veteran who had taught them that surviving was not a sin, but a responsibility, that carrying the dead was meant to honor them, not punish the living. Wade's cane was placed on his casket alongside his chaplain's cross. His last words, spoken to Cross 3 days before he died, had been simple. "I'm proud of you, son. Keep teaching others to choose life." On the 5th anniversary of their Montana trip, Cross and Maya met at Fort Garrison, walked to the training field where it had all begun. "You ever regret breaking my arm?" Cross asked. "Every day," Maya smiled. "But I don't regret what came after." "Neither do I." They stood in silence. Two people who had been broken and had healed each other. Two soldiers who had learned that strength was not about never falling, but about getting back up and helping others rise with you. "Choose life," Cross said quietly. "Always," Maya replied. They walked away from the field, not looking back, moving forward, carrying the memory of those who had not survived, but carrying them as inspiration instead of chains. The last shepherd led not from strength, but from honesty about weakness. Led not by being unbreakable, but by showing that broken things could be made whole again. And in that wholeness found purpose that 7 years of grief could never provide. End.